But now it is getting more and more imperative that we learn the skill of investing. So they're your first four.
Number 5, OnlyFans.
Irish people, we are amazing. We're amazing at earning money.
So, Kel, a lot of people will know you as a no-spend-year woman. Back in 2019, you saved over €27,000 by cutting out all unnecessary spending. What sparked that decision?
How long is a piece of string, Katie? Okay, do you know what? I think a lot of people will resonate with my story. It's not a unique story by any manner of means, but it would have started off right before the last recession, that great recession that we had. I, like how many other people, went out, bought a house I couldn't afford. I had a mortgage for over 7.5 times my income.
Whoa, how did you get that?
It was a different time.
Yeah.
Now, I'm saying that, not going, oh, look at me, isn't that great? Because I did not understand mortgages. I did not understand debt. Now, I knew I could work. I knew I had a bit of education. I have no problem doing whatever job I need to do. So I trusted myself. But I did not understand economies. I did not understand dips. I did not understand the vulnerability that can come from things that are entirely outside your control.
Yeah.
That I didn't understand. So when the recession hit, suddenly I found myself in a ghost estate. The house or everything that could go wrong went wrong. There was break-ins and squatters and half-built houses and burnt-out cars and everything. We ended up leaving there. But when we ended up leaving there, I had 2 young kids. My husband, who worked really hard, but the company he'd worked for 15 years had folded at the time. So suddenly we just had my income. We were renting, we had a mortgage, and we had $2,000 a month in creche fees because he had to go back and retrain. My income was quite modest at the time. I was quite early in my career. And it took us about 10 years to get out of that mess. We had no quality of life. We had no spare cash. It was literally not even getting month to month. It was a mess. But after 10 years, I had thrown myself into my career. I had learned as much as I could about money. I was starting to learn a little bit about trying to save properly, not let my family get that vulnerable again. So that was great, and things were on an even keel. We got back up to zero. And I remember the day we actually got back up to zero, the day we were worth nothing. Like, that was one of the best days of my life. We had gone from 6 figures of debt, 10 years of horribleness, and then the day we realised we were worth nothing, it was like, oh, this is brilliant. Look at us. We've actually made it back to zero. And then I promised myself from that point on, I would make sure that we never went beneath that again, that we could handle ourselves no matter what the economy threw at us. Because it didn't matter how good you were at earning money. There's so many things outside your control that if you're not prepared for it, they can catch you off guard. But there's 2 sides to every coin. In order for me to do that, I still didn't fully have a good relationship with money. A lot of it was driven around fear. So I had thrown myself into work and everything was about getting the income in. Get the money in the door, and we'll figure out the rest, get the money in the door. To the point where I was working all of the time. I was working evenings, I was working weekends. I had taken on a master's at that stage because the drive was so strong. But I was hitting burnout. And even though my job was very good to me, I was absolutely hitting burnout. And I remember one day I was taking a study day coming close to my master's, the final exams. And I said I'd collect my son from school. And he would have been in senior infants and his sister would have been in 2nd class at that stage. So they weren't new to school, they'd been in there a few years. But I didn't recognise anybody in the playground. Nobody knew who I was. I didn't know who they were. And all the kids are being collected. And my son, he finished about an hour earlier than the older classes. Yeah. And there's nobody in the yard. And the teacher looks out and she goes, sorry, who are you? And I said, well, I'm here to collect my son. And she said, well, I'm very sorry, but I have no idea who you are. Oh, you cannot collect any child. Yeah. Now, to be fair to the school, they were correct. Nobody knew who I was. I was never there to collect it. And everybody knows the mom. In this world, everybody knows the mom. Nobody knew who I was. Now, I got to collect him. He's fine. He's still mine. Yeah. But it really held up the mirror to my life that I was gone all the time. I had no quality of life. And I kind of went, this is not right either. Something had to give. So I sat down with my husband and I said, look, and I was the breadwinner and I had been the breadwinner for quite some time. And we ran the maths and we said, okay, if I took a year out, just 1 year out, then I'll go back to working, I'll do whatever. But I just want to do this. So we said, work the math. And I said, okay, it'll be really tight, but we can do it. And that's when I handed in my notice to my 16-year career, like no redundancy, nothing, just handed in, walked away. I had no idea what I was going to do. But I thought, right, if I was going to cut our income in more than half, I was going to make that income work as hard as it possibly could. And that's what brought on the no spend year. So I opened my first social media account, set myself out a set of rules, and thank goodness, like I do like kind of little lists of rules to kind of go to keep me on track. And it just took off from there. And that's where the social media piece came from. And after the year, I realised, whoa, we've cut our outgoings by over €27,000. That I was not expecting at all, but it was all the small things done well over time. That brought on the book, that brought on me being requalifying as a QFA, and ultimately, X amount of years later, working with my own company, Mrs. Smart Money, helping people to manage their finances better and learn how to invest.
It's an incredible story. So you spent 16 years in the pharmaceutical sector. You have a Master's of Science, but then this trajectory took you into training as a qualified financial advisor. So I'm curious, is there any similarities between the two? Like, is there a science as such to building wealth?
Yes, actually. And I remember when I was starting this part of the journey of trying to help people get better with money, and I was like, I have all this education. It's no good to me. Like, my undergraduate is microbiology, my master's is in reg affairs. I was like, this is all this education. What's the point? But as I went on, I realised, no education is ever lost. So anybody who's thinking of upskilling, it is never lost. What the science background has done for me, it has allowed me to take complex things and simplify them. And it's allowed me to create systems that are repeatable. And that's the beauty of science. Fundamentally, science is creating things that you can replicate consistently to get consistent results. And that has been so key to everything that I've done in my current evolution, formation, whatever you want to call it, because it has forced me to simplify absolutely everything and make it systematized. Because when you're dealing with money, and money is so important, it is like the key, no matter what you earn in life, no matter what job you do, you're going to be earning money. And you want to build with that, but you don't want it ruling your whole life. You want it to be a partner in I'm not going to say crime, but you want it to be an ally with you, a wing person.
Yes.
So you're still free to live your life, but you know your money's growing in the background. And it can only do that if you understand it, you have a good relationship with it, and you've good systems in place.
Yes.
And then it doesn't actually take much time or energy or stress or worry, because it's just busy doing its thing.
I'm going to stop you for one moment. Dave, can we, I can still hear you guys, just to let you know. It's not a big deal, but I just thought I'd take a moment now to let you know. Yeah, no worries at all. Cool. Yeah, it's flow. I didn't want to break the flow, but I will let you know at this point, just in case someone calls me stupid or... Yeah. I was kind of thinking, like, do you know, how would I handle that? If Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to go back in. I think at this point we're kind of led up to the investing. Yeah, so I think so making complex. I think, but I do want to get that across, you know, that you don't sell. So your work now is education based. You don't sell financial products. I'm going to open with that. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. So the work you do these days, it's education based. You don't sell financial products. And a lot of the education you do is around investing, which is a complex topic, and you do make it simple. So can you tell me how you got into investing? And did it seem complex to you when you started?
Yes. So I started investing actually over 20 years ago. I'm 20-something years into doing it now. And when I started out investing, it was partly because I knew savings wouldn't get me where I wanted to go. And I knew I needed to do more. But after that, I hadn't a clue. I really didn't. So I remember kind of trying to... You'd hear things, and I think YouTube was a much younger place back then, if it even existed when I started. But you'd hear some of the big companies or whatever. And I remember making my first investment. And oh my goodness, younger me should never, ever, ever give advice to anybody, because I hadn't a clue what I was doing and I didn't understand markets. And just like everything else before, I learned everything the hard way. But I remember buying Microsoft.
Okay.
So it was in the early 2000s, and like it was a budding enough company. It was also household, like you'd Excel and you'd all these different things. So I said, okay, this is a company going to be around for a while. And I remember buying it, and it was at about €21 at the time, right? Or maybe $21, something like that. And that seemed a lot at the time for me because I had no money to spare back then. And it was doing okay. It was tipping along. I wasn't doing much. And then a couple of months in, 'cause when you buy a share and you don't know exactly what you're doing, you're going to be watching like a hawk, literally. And you're going to be stressing. It's gone up 5 cents. It's gone up this. It's gone up.
So you first thing in the morning before you even open your eyes, just check your portfolio.
You're dreaming about this €21, and you're going what's going to happen to it? And it's very stressful. It's a very stressful place to be. And next thing, there was some dip, some bigger thing had happened, and it dropped down. And I went, oh no, the sky's falling. I went full chicken licking on this, panicked to heck, and I just sold sold everything.
I'm so glad you've said that, because I think this is something that every beginner investor needs to be prepared for, because they haven't factored in. They're just seeing something kind of gradually go up in these tiny little movements, or gradually down, but then a big correction or a big crash comes along and it's petrifying. You think that the world's ending and and your money's gone forever, so you have to take out whatever's left. I think I'm so glad you said that, because it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, because I sold more than that weekend.
Yes.
I literally, now when I say, I'm going to use the term portfolio, but it was something really modest. But for me, it was so much at the time. It was probably maybe a couple of €100, but that was my world. Right,
yes.
When it came to investing. And there was another company, it was a pharma company, and they had fallen in half that weekend because it was something bigger than that. Some economic shift had happened. But literally after that weekend, after I thinking the sky was falling down, it bounced back.
Yeah.
It bounced back and then some. And the pharma company that I'd sold, literally 3 or 4 days after that, started giving a dividend, which jumped it up, nearly doubled it in price. So I sold at a loss of about maybe 25-30%. Had I waited one long weekend, I would have been double my money and everything and suddenly getting a dividend. But I'd sold out. I'd locked in my loss, and that was it. And that burned me. And I was like, I can't do this investing thing. I'm rubbish at this. I can't. This is not for me. And I left it off for a while. But then I kept coming back to it. And I started learning. I started researching a lot more. And I made many, many more mistakes. I listened to the wrong advice. I listened to hype. I followed, somebody from a different country, because their systems are different, their tax systems are different, everything is so different, and it does not necessarily apply to Ireland. So I made all those mistakes, and I have made many bigger mistakes since then. But now I have learned, when it comes to investing, it is not about the hype or the flashy stock or the anything. It is about the small things done well, consistently putting your money in, leaving it alone, no matter what leaders of different countries are saying. No matter what recession that we're in, we come out of recessions and into recessions all of the time. But until you make peace with that, it is very, very hard to just set and forget. And that's one of the biggest skills any successful investor can have, is the patience and trust that over time the market will go up and to the right, is what they say. So as it rises over time. But in the meantime, it'll jump and it'll fall and it'll jump and it'll fall. And that's a really hard place to be if you're not ready for it.
Yes. Makes perfect sense. It brings to mind the famous Warren Buffett quote, be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. Easier said than done, though, because, when there is a crash and everything seems to be in free fall, you might have, a few months previously said, I can't wait to have a buying opportunity when a crash comes. But it's very, very different when everything's in the red. It's almost, there's a psychology to just not being able to do it. Are you able to do it? Are you able to buy when everything's in the red?
Well, you see, when everything goes in the red, how do you know when you're at the bottom? Yes. How do you know when you're on the way back up? How do you know that this isn't the big one that's going to ruin everything and we're going to be just, the biggest commodity is going to be water? You can't know this. You absolutely can't know this. And this is the big thing that catches us, because there's so many investors maybe sitting on the sidelines with loads and loads of cash, or potential investors, and they're going, I'm going to wait. Now, the first time I heard the next big recession was coming after our last one was 2014. And I've been following the stock market pretty much every day I'll check in and just curious to see what's going on. But the first kind of callings of this next big recession, 2014, and there was a couple of big well-known investor names, and a lot of them are based in the US, and they were like, oh, I'm all out, I'm on cash, or I've just gone into silver or something like that, like a more of a commodity type thing, and I'm going to wait because it's going to be a big crash. Now, anybody who took their money out of the stock market in 2014, like, they have lost 10x of their potential growth over that time. If it's way more, it could easily be. I'd need to sit down and just quickly do the math on it. But like the stock market, the S&P might have been at not even 2,000, and now it's 6,500, 7,000 in that space of time. Like, you're leaving multiple on the table because we cannot predict recessions. We cannot predict peaks. We cannot predict any of that. Nobody can. If we could, then the smart people would, they'd be doing that and we'd be following them, because when you understand how to invest, there's a lot more transparency than we think, and you can see what Warren Buffett is doing or Charlie Munger is doing, and you can see if they're selling out or not. And they're just doing the same patterns over and over again. They're buying in regularly, they're holding whatever stock they've decided they're going to hold. They're not pulling out, and they most likely never will, because even they don't know when the next crash is. So the piece of advice I would give people is, when you start, and we can talk about this part in a minute of how you even go by starting, but when you start, make your plan, understand what you are doing, like make sure you're getting your advice from the right people, and just stay consistent. Just consistent over time. And if you do that, and let's take just a random example. You put €50 in every month, and that's what you can afford to put in. And you put it in when the thing is going up. You put it in when there's a dip. You put it in when it's back up again. When there's a dip and an up. And whatever it is, that same day, same date, every day of the month, you put that money in, you will do better over time by doing that. Because, yeah, you'll catch some peaks, but over time, they're not going to seem like peaks because they're way lower, because the market tends to be going up.
Yes. And
you'll win in those little dips because you're going to be putting a little bit of money in those as well.
Yes.
And the big thing with the stock market is the stock market rises on average 70% of the time. But we don't really notice it because it's like tiny little bits, and it's like, oh yeah, whatever, it's like 1%, 0.5%. But when it drops, that's when you hear the headlines.
Yes.
That's when you're, oh no, the sky is falling down, we're in recession, this person has had an opinion on something and the whole stock has gone through the floor. You hear the big things and you hear the scary things, but you rarely hear, well, today was a good day. Things are all right.
Yes. Let's
go see some puppies. You don't hear that.
Yeah.
You don't hear that, because that's not as interesting, because we're humans and we're designed to look out to take care of ourselves. We're designed to protect ourselves. So we're going to be more attuned to the sky's falling down, the stock market's at an all-time high, it's going to be awful. But every single time it corrects itself, and then it'll start going back up again. And it has to purely on the back of inflation. It has to rise up, and we don't need to get into, but currency debasement is happening all the time, i.e. countries are printing money. So naturally the stock market has to go up, if nothing else, but for those two reasons.
Sure.
And but they're two of a million things at play.
Yes.
So you just have to trust that what you pick is there for the long term, and that depends on what asset route you choose to go down through, and then you just stick it out. You leave it there and you just let it do its thing.
Yes. So letting it do its thing and leaving it there, we come to time horizon and, how long you're in the market. And there is that famous investment saying, which is, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market that matters. Would you agree with that?
Yes. There was a study done, and it was basically, if you missed the top 3 or 4 days over a decade of the S&P. Now, the S&P 500 is the Standard & Poor's 500. So for anybody who's not aware of what that is, it's just an index. An index is just a benchmark, a bunch of a particular type of company. In this case, it's the top 500 companies in the US. So there'll be a lot of the big names, the Metas, the Amazons, all that kind of stuff will be in there. And it's a good indication of how America is getting on. But it's a common one. And over between, I think, 2000 and 2010, if you missed the top couple of days of growth, you missed out on about 20 or 30% of the whole growth overall. You can't know when those 2 days are.
Yes.
You can't know. And if you missed the top 10 days, it was a little bit less than that, but like, you're still looking at big chunks of money. So you're better off either doing euro cost averaging, which means to just put your money in every month, or what is also a regular one, but not everybody's able to do it, but just lump sum. So if you go in January, put in your chunk of money, go away till next January, like don't even open your app, don't even do anything, just leave it alone, and come back and put your next lump sum in the next January or February or whenever it is, and just do that. If you are stoic enough to do that, you're onto a winner.
Yeah. So it seems to be a lot of it seems to be just fighting some very primitive urges. You know, I think you just have to learn to just sit in your hands and master patience, master greed, and battle it out.
And do you know, there's a real irony here, because so many Irish people were afraid of investing for a million reasons. Now, to be fair, we have been scarred. We've had Ansbacher accounts, we've had Aircom shares, we've had like people had just before the crypto winter, all those different things. Now, I'm going to put a caveat in here, Katie. Crypto I see is very different. As much as I'm fascinated by blockchain and crypto, it is very different to stock market investing.
Yes.
They are two totally different asset classes. Crypto would fall under alternatives. Stock market would be your stocks, shares, ETFs, those products. So they are different, and they're very different risk levels within that. So just as a caveat, they're not the same thing.
Absolutely.
So as Irish people, we have a history of being scalded several times when it comes to any form of investing. And as such, a lot of us don't invest. Actually, another big reason is Ireland as a country, we don't have a history of it. And I don't think we appreciate how much that affects us, because we look at the UK, we look at Europe, we look at the US. They've had money for a lot longer than Ireland has had money. Ireland has been poor for so much of its history. Like, we only got fully electrified, I think, in the 70s.
Yes.
You know, woman could only own a house in her own name in 1976, the marriage bar, all these different things. Like, we're a young country that's starting out, and we haven't had a lot of money. And this is the first time that we even have the bandwidth to consider this, and we have to consider it. But when we look at the countries around us, and we're up to their level, like, we are amazingly capable at moving fast and bringing ourselves up, but we haven't brought the skill set up. And when we look at monarchies and intergenerational wealth from those other countries, we think, well, we should be as good as them. We should be able to have these portfolios and things like that. But our parents, as good as they were, didn't have the skill set to hand to us. And even if they did, they probably didn't have the money to even consider this. And technology wasn't to the level it is now, and it wasn't as easy to invest as what it is now. So it is new. Our dabblings in the past haven't necessarily urged us on.
Yes.
It's not like The Alchemist.
Paulo Coelho, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the book The Alchemist.
Yeah.
Like, it's the beginner's luck. You try something and the world conspires to make it easier for you. We've kind of had the opposite when it's come to investing. We've been scolded several times. But now it is getting more and more imperative that we learn the skill of investing. And the reason I say that is when you look at the CSO stats. I love the CSO stats. It's such a good litmus of what's happening in the country. Not everybody's cup of tea, I will admit. But when you look at the CSO stats, there are approximately 5 ways people in Ireland have grown wealth over time. The first way is to have a good paying job and you have your pension. Okay. Second is to own a business. Now, most people pick one of these 2 paths. You don't have to go all 5 of these. You pick one of the 2 of these, whichever discipline works best for you. You'll know yourself what that is. The next 2 are real estate, and a huge amount of Ireland's wealth historically has been built up through real estate. We've had a huge boom of it, and to be fair, the tax system leans itself towards that. Now, unfortunately, we're in a very hot market. We have a major deficit in housing, and we're looking at a whole generation that may not ever even be able to buy a house. And that's a tough place to be. Whereas in past generations, you could build up, rightly or wrongly, a portfolio, a real estate portfolio, and you could do very well off that. That's not open to everybody now. The fourth way is investing. And when I say investing, I'm talking stock market. And the stock market is one of the few ways to democratize wealth in this country, because anybody can learn the skill. If you get it from the right information sources and you create the right plan, you can do this, right? This is not for ridiculously intelligent people. It is not for certain types of people. Anybody can learn this skill, and it opens breaking that glass money ceiling to everybody. So they're your first 4. Well-paying job, have your own business, real estate, stock market investing.
And number 5, OnlyFans.
6 then we'll go. I hadn't really included that one, but you know what? We are very capable people. The 5th one, besides OnlyFans, 5th one 2.0 is alternatives. Now, alternatives would fall gold, silver, crypto, whiskey, jewellery, like those kind of paintings, artwork. That is a very valid way to make money. It tends to be higher risk, and I would say only go near that when you have your steady source of income, which I see as the first 2. Pick one of those.
Yes.
One of the middle 2, depending on your background. Some people can still make money out of real estate, but investing is imperative. And if you've 2 of those, your income and your growth engine sorted, then if you want to go further or you're very interested in researching a particular thing, absolutely go for it. But I would be slow to recommend anybody to go near alternatives until you have a good grounding in the other 2.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So there is a big push at the moment, a big EU push to turn savers into investors, and that's particularly in Ireland, where we are a nation of savers. And likewise in the UK, there's a government-backed advertising campaign at the moment to get people investing. So there's very much this drive behind it, and yet it feels like the tax situation in Ireland is still making it quite prohibitive. Would you agree?
Yes. And here's the thing, like, Irish people, we are amazing. We're amazing at earning money. We are amazing at building things. And when you're in a situation where you have a good income coming in, even if it doesn't feel like it, like we are in a high cost of living country, but you have a good income coming in, you're good at saving, you need another option. You may not be able to buy a home. You may not be able to have a real estate empire. You need something else. And our tax system is old. It's antiquated. It's got some taxes in it that should not be there if they genuinely do want people to break that glass money ceiling and stand on their own 2 feet. And I think that is something over and above, and not everyone will agree with me because it is a little bit controversial, that we don't necessarily need a new SSIA, although I would not say no to it. I would put my hand up and go, yes, I'm first in line. We need to modernise those tax laws so they come more in line with Europe. And that will make things so much easier and just streamline it so people can learn the skill of investing, have an easier tax system. And you're going to have a lot more independent people who will be able to invest long enough to be able to afford houses or build their own financial security, as opposed to hoping for the best in the future.
Yes. So what kind of position does a person need to be in financially before they start thinking about investing?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the maverick part of us, the part that just wants the quick win, who wants I want to be that one person who, like, you know, beats the stock market and gets like this million X return. Slow down. Okay. Slow down. The biggest thing you need to do for yourself is get your day-to-day finances sorted. And it's not very sexy. It's not very, oh, cool, wait till I tell you I sorted out my rainy day fund. Like, it's the dull part. But I can also guarantee you that if you have that in place, you're taking a lot of risk out of the system when you do start investing, because you've built up your money life jacket, is what I like to call it. And that means that you have that safety net in place, that if there is a dip or there is a recession or there is a job loss, you're okay. You don't have to raid your investing coffers. So what that looks like is to get your savings properly in place, but like label them up, like get your rainy day fund, your sinking funds, your emergency funds, those kind of things in place. Another huge thing is to look at your debt. If you have debt, and if your debt is, let's say, and really sit down and look at these things. A mortgage may be okay, because that tends to be a long running thing if you're lucky enough to have a mortgage nowadays, and they tend to be lower rates, and they're much more secured, right? There's a lot of regulations around mortgages. But if you have credit card, payday loan, even personal loans where the interest rate is higher, and I'm going to do a little learning moment if you give me a second. When you are looking at your interest rates, I want you to specifically hunt out the APR. The APR is your annual percentage rate. And that is your interest rate plus any other kind of fees and setup things. That's the true rate that you are paying back. So you might have an interest rate and it says it's like 4.5%, but the APR could be 5.2%. 5.2% is what you're actually paying. So you need to be aware of this. So APR is where it's at, and that's the true amount you're paying back. So look at that, because not all interest rates are equal when you build an APR. So if you have loans, particularly loans that are anything over 5% APR, really just pay those off first. And the reason I say that is, if you are going to take investing seriously, and if you genuinely want to grow your money over time, there's really good investments that over time can give you, taking inflation out, like a 7-8% return. But if you're paying off a debt that's costing you 7 or 8%, you're locking in a guaranteed win without taking on the risk of investing.
Yes.
So get rid of your debt first. Mortgage, I kind of go, look, yeah, let that run. But if you've any debt over 5-6%, just get that paid off. And even just any debt that's not your mortgage, clear that.
Yes.
Because even if you decided, you know what, that's low enough, I'm going to carry it on, and you make the decision to do that, well, God forbid if there was a job loss down the line, well, you have to service that debt and your mortgage and your living and all your other things. And you may have to dip into your investments, and it could be at the wrong time. It could be when your investing is down and your portfolio isn't looking that healthy. And that's the last time you want to be putting your hand into the pot to raid it. You want to leave it alone. So get your savings in place, get rid of that debt, and then start learning the skill of investing.
Yes. Now, in terms of your first investment, would it make more sense to have a lump sum before you start thinking about putting 100 quid a month away? Because presumably that lump sum is going to kind of spark the compounding early on for an early win. Would that make sense?
Yes, and your logic is quite good, but I take a slightly different perspective on that. And my perspective would be, start very slowly. Start with the €50 a month. Give yourself the space to make a few mistakes. Give yourself the space to go, okay, if I put this in and let it run, and if I do panic, right, we're human. We're going to panic because you're going to hear an announcement or something will change and the stock market will have a total roller coaster moment. And you're going to have an equally worse roller coaster moment because you'll feel your stomach lurching and you may press that sell button. It's okay if it's a small amount of money. You don't want to be putting in something like an inheritance or some big amount of money that you do not want until you're ready. And when you realise, actually, do you know what, I have my plan now for investing. I know what my goals are. I know the timeline that I have. Now I can start putting in more because you've tested the water, you've played around, you've made it safer for yourself. You're not panicking and you're getting a good night's sleep. Then I would say put in the big money. Like people will feel, oh, I want to get it in now and give, because it is time in the market, absolutely. But that's not going to be good if you're going to be a nervous wreck.
Yes. Okay, the person listening to this, they're interested, they're intrigued, they want to give it a go. 2026 is the year they're going to start investing, but they haven't done it before. So is there like a low risk investment product that they could try? Maybe we could talk a little bit about platforms as well. So just to kind of guide people through the next steps, what should they be looking at?
Yeah, okay. Definitely, whatever you do, give yourself the best grounding you can. Because investing, it's a skill, right? It's a skill like riding a bike, learning a language, cooking a spaghetti bolognese, right? It's a skill. And it doesn't have to be the best spaghetti bolognese. You just need to know how to make a half decent thing that won't kill you, right? But it is a skill. And I would say when you are looking for things, look for credible people who are in your jurisdiction, because we do have a weird tax system, and what works in Ireland won't work in the UK or work in Europe. When it comes to products, it does depend on your end goal. However, that's all well and good, Kel, give me something solid to work with here. So I think for a lot of people, you need to know what type of investor you're going to be. And if you are willing to put in a lot of time, if you really want to, this is a hobby that you're excited about or whatever, you might look into shares. But for most people, our lives are busy enough. We don't necessarily want to spend all day looking at candlestick graphs and all these crazy things that you most likely won't ever really need if you're a long-term investor. So something simple like an ETF is a really good place to start.
So an ETF is essentially a bundle.
Yeah, it's what's called an exchange traded fund. an exchange traded fund, they are amazing things. So what they literally are is it's a bundle of shares. So you're getting what's called instant diversification. And let's just touch back on the S&P 500 I mentioned earlier. So that is an index. And companies who make financial products can go, I'm going to do a photocopy of this S&P 500 and I'm going to make it into a product. And I am going to put this on the stock market. They have just made an S&P 500 ETF. And you can go, I would like to buy part of that S&P 500. I don't have the resources or wherewithal to go in and buy each of those 500 companies individually. I want to do one click, buy this, and keep it.
Yes.
So you log onto your platform and you research the right one for you, because there will be great choices, huge choices. So you need to know which one you're buying, currency and all that kind of stuff. But once you know the right one, you just literally go back in every month and buy that same one. And it becomes very simple. Once you've done your due diligence, you know it's the right one for you. And then you can do, so you can make things very, very simple for yourself. You don't need to have 400 different assets in your portfolio. You could just have a handful.
Yes. Yes.
And just stick with that and just put it on rinse and repeat for the rest of your life. Ta-da.
Finally, 3 questions that the beginner investor should ask themselves before they embark on this.
What are my timelines? That is huge. What am I doing this for? So when I say that, if you are young and you're starting out and you're going, I want to retire early, and while I'm putting money into my pension, and please do, guys, max out your pensions, please, because that is an investment as well. That's going into the stock market too. First port of call for anybody. So you want, just say you want to retire before the traditional 65, 66 or whatever. You're going to need a pot of money for that. So then you're going to go, okay, I want to retire at 50. And you're younger. You'll create your plan to go, well, I'm 25, I'm going to retire at 50. I have 25 years. This is a really good timeline. This is what I'm going, and I'm going to leave that money in there. I am not touching it for 25 years. I'm just going to keep adding to it. That's one ball game. Then you have another person and they're going, okay, well, I have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old and they're going to go to college and they might want to be, I don't know, doctors or going to another country. I'm going to need a chunk of money for that, but I'm paying a mortgage. I'm doing all these different things. I cannot afford to save. That's a different setup. You're going to have to think of different timelines, and it's a different amount of money you're going to need as well. So ask yourself, what's the money for? And when you figure out what that is, like literally label it in your head. If you have a spreadsheet where you're tracking things, this is for a kid one college, this is for my early retirement. Like really get clever with that. The next thing is realistically figure out how much you can invest. And I say can as opposed to want, because our human nature wants us to go, I'm going to put it in as much as possible because it's going to grow, it's going to be brilliant, and I'm going to be so stoic that I'm not going to touch it. You're going to probably touch it at some stage and maybe take it out, and particularly at the beginning. So know what you realistically can put in. And that's, you know that by understanding your personal finances really, really well. And you want to put in, I would say, and again, I would agree with me, less than what you think you can. Because when you put that money in, you want to leave it alone. You don't want to put yourself too tight to the pin of your collar and go, sugar, I need to actually take that back out again. There's fees and there's this and this. You don't want to do that. You want to just put it in and leave it alone. So put in less than you think.
That's all brilliant advice. Thank you so much, Kel.
You're more welcome.